Okay,
So,
so this is Kent Bai of the Voices of VR podcast. We're here in the Apart Poster virtual poster gallery. I'm here with James. James, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me a bit about like where we're at?
sure. I'm James Kane. I'm the immersive tech lead at Paradowski Creative. Um, my team is focused on spatial computing and XR, which is the AR VR stuff. We are basically do interactive and game dev for marketing. So we have a lot of agriculture, healthcare, and education clients. We're a full service marketing agency, ad agency. About 100 strong, mix of creatives, accounts, and tech team. I specifically lead the XR tech team, and we at the start of this, whole pandemic crisis, just I think a lot of us were struggling with how to react and how to approach it. And one of the ways as creative people we always fall back to is how can we use our art to process what's happening. And I think what you're seeing around here and what we're about to walk through is the real reflection of that. So we started as a community poster show, basically. Um, our team generated about 30 poster designs, put them up for sale, all COVID-19 themed, all pandemic relief themed. We put them up for sale on an e-commerce site, and we're going to donate all the proceeds to the WHO. Um, so we're in the process of that, and that's a whole, e-commerce layer and a, printing layer and order fulfillment layer. But then we want to also create this home for the art to live permanently, and that's what we see this space as. And I think that's probably a good high level overview if you want to maybe take a step through
Yeah.
and
Maybe we could start to locomote and move around, and we'll sort of
sure.
see how if I can stay close enough so we are physically close enough to be able to hear each other. But
Mhm.
yeah, so as I was walking around here, uh, the things that I noticed is that, first of all, it's a
Mhm.
pretty vast space, a lot bigger than I'm used to seeing here in
Yes,
Mozilla
yes, yes,
Hubs.
yes.
11 different rooms, lots of great lighting. Maybe you could talk about
Mhm.
like, well, first of all, is this like all one file, or just uh,
Yeah, yeah.
talk a bit about
Ultimately,
your
baked
process
down
of
in
creating this space?
sure. Ultimately, yeah, it bakes down to one GLB, which is a GLTF binary file. So it's all one scene. It was cooked in several, batches and phases and stuff. But our primary creative tool for this whole space was Blender, which is we love it because it's free, it's open source, amazingly powerful, modifiable if you know Python well. Um, so yeah, a lot of the process was just like design review of the space in Blender, and then we're able to bring that export into the Hub's cloud ecosystem, basically through their 3D spoke editor. They have a lot of really cool built-in functionality for media players, for some limited particle effects and shader effects. The this spoke editor is meant to just give you some baseline tools to create generally pretty flat lit 3D rooms. I think if you've used Hubs before, what you've often seen is pretty flat lighting, or if it is texture, baked lighting in the textures, it's a very small space. I think what we've managed to do here that I'm super proud of my team for is that this is a museum scale, massive space with fairly high quality textures and lighting throughout. And yeah, the Blender ecosystem hooked into the Hubs ecosystem made that possible.
Yeah, I think that's the most thing that I noticed is just the lighting is amazing to the different rooms because
Mhm. Yeah.
it's a small thing to give it that type of gallery lighting, but it does require knowing how to set up the lights and using Blender and doing all that. One of the things that I noticed
Absolutely.
when I was walking in this room was that there's actually uh, a lot of like the different rooms and then the room names that are
Yeah,
over
yeah, sure.
here. One of the things that I would have liked to have seen, I guess, as I'm moving around and locomoting through the space, is it a little bit easier to know what the theme of the room is as I walk into the room,
Sure, yeah, yeah,
because it wasn't
for
until
sure.
I walked through the space to be able to know. But maybe you could describe as I guess I see it here where the heart is, kind of small right there. But maybe you could just kind of like walk me through some of these different rooms and talk about the themes that are emerged. So like, what is this
Yeah.
room? What's the theme in this room?
Yeah, so we got over 150 poster submissions internationally, essentially. It grew kind of a little bit beyond our expectations, which is amazing. Um, and what we saw as we were like trying to sift through the submissions and kind of curate this space is they did fall into like themes or categories. And our creative directors, I'll call out to Andy Wise, who's our VP of Creative Tech, and Terry Mitchell, who's creative director of ours, they really like concepted the whole space and just so for instance where we're standing in now is the homeroom, so all these posters have to do with home essentially. They all have to do with the notion of where we feel safe and yeah, where we find comfort, and some of that is now of course being trapped in our home, but of course, that's still such a meaningful concept to everybody. So that's an example of one room. If you want to follow into
Yep.
here,
Hold on one second. Uh,
I'm sorry.
nope. Go ahead. I
Sorry,
just
So this is a grouping. It's like the more lighthearted of the posters, and it's like using like humor and levity and satire to address the crisis, which we think is a totally valid approach to the project. So we made a room that's just kind of a little more fun and silly, and you can see the kind of inverted gravity of it all, the bubbles drawing your eye upward. Yeah.
yeah, just a logistical point. When you move around, it's hard. Like maybe it's hard to locomote and still hear you and record you at the same level. So if we just sort of stand still when you're speaking, but yeah, I love the little bubbles and this effect. I love the the being able to look up and see stuff on the ceiling. So yeah, cool. Well, let's move on to the next room, and you can tell me what's on there. And yeah, I really.
So a lot of the posters had generally just this theme of like together apart. So this is the together apart hall. Let me see over. Sorry, I'm supposed to not be moving. I forget. So like together we'll get through this, or together apart over here. It's just a theme we saw in repeatedly in the community. So kind of using this hallway as a transitional area to call that out.
Okay. Nice. Okay. What do we have here?
So this is okay, great. Yeah, this is the PSAs for Days room. So another major theme we saw emerge was a lot of these like works progress administration poster styles. I'm going to move real quick and we can over here in front of this big one.
Oops. Oh, right here?
Our VP of Creative Tech, Andy, in addition to being a very competent programmer, is also a very skilled graphic designer, and he created, this was the original poster, the flatten the curve, stay home poster. And that was kind of in this works progress administration style of, and so again, we saw a lot of work like this, and yeah, kind of just grouping the themes together. PSA style, really.
Right. Yeah, so let's move on to the next room. There's one of the things that I noticed was that you have this sort of auto loading approach where you go to the website and you've got a number of different instances of Mozilla Hubs Cloud, and you kind of are putting people into the same room together. We're in a room just with us, but that's it. And the space is so big that I noticed that it's kind of like a museum where you're just kind of talking. You're not really at the museum to necessarily talk to people. So I think it'll be interesting if there's any ways that you can see like how a space that's this big, if it's able to, have these different posters and have people kind of organically cluster or just start to hang out, or if they meet up with their friends, or if they just are able to connect with strangers. So, but my immediate sense is that because the space is so big that it kind of diffuses the social interaction and really puts the focus on the art. But I think it's like it's an art, a mysterious art. Like, how do you create a space that really facilitates different emergent social dynamics?
Sure. Um, yeah, something we definitely considered, and like the hub's cap is a per room is a hard cap due to end device performance. If you start getting beyond the 25 to 30 person per room limit, it just drags, and oftentimes the audio becomes terrible and it can even crash. So that was a hard limit we were dealing with, and just like how to manage that UX entry problem. I don't know if you noticed, but like most of our work with the Hubs UI was just dramatically simplifying it. They are trying to accommodate so many different use cases that they're, for our purposes, was a little bit of clutter to the UI. So overall, I'm just cutting things and making a little customization, but other than that, it's pretty similar. I should completely shout out the Mozilla Hubs team and the Mozilla Reality team, because their support on their Discord was one of the things that made this project possible. And the volume of requests and questions they field in there is incredible, and they're always helpful and ready to jump in. And so, yeah, I appreciate them, and shout out to them. And a lot of our workflow for this process, I'm going to talk about another one of my colleagues, Ethan Michalicek, and he was really our lead technical artist on this, and a true talent, a true superstar, and another one of the pillars of this project. So shout him out as well.
Yeah, I was just in the Mozilla Hubs meetup today and talking to Greg Fodor, and he said, yeah, there's a big balance of trying to continue to give that community support, engaging with the community, see what's happening, helping people, and really cultivating that community. But at the same time, they still have to also build and improve and complete all the different feature requests. So yeah, definitely cool to see that cultivation in the community is able to produce stuff like this. When I came into this room, this was quite interesting because it's got a number of different spiral staircase around the room, and you go up, and it's got the fog. So just kind of a different way that it's kind of fun to explore around and to see this. But what's the theme of this room?
Yeah, this is the new abnormal. So a lot of just artists and designers processing like what is going to change for good, what is just temporary setbacks, how is life going to change going forward. And I think that's what all the posters in this room evoke. And yeah, the designer of this room was Shelby Bierman, one of our directors. And yeah, I love the concept she had of just like this kind of elevating style room, because it's really the only upward motion you make other than a ramp. And if we can go up a little bit, we can check out
Sure,
the wire hand sculptures. Yeah, why don't we do that?
Yeah, so we're walking up the stairs here, and we're kind of just. I first saw this in the index, and so going up the stairs and using the click turn, but just having the posters here on the wall too is kind of an interesting. It's different, and it makes it just interesting. I've never seen a museum space like this, so it's kind of unique in that way.
Right, yeah. Well, if this were an actual museum, it would be very unsafe, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You
start to get into the virtual architecture that's really impossible. And I actually, in the very first room, I saw that there was a space to kind of overlook, and we could probably go up that later, but when you get up to the top, you kind of have to go all the way back down. So it's just kind of like I was expecting that this was going to lead somewhere, but yeah, that was like, when I got up here, I was like, oh, I guess I just have to go back down. But there was another place where I was able to get to. But in the very opening scene, I saw that, oh, wow, there's a second level. I wonder if I can get up to it. And this is where I thought I might be able to. But yeah, kind of a neat experience. But what were you going to show me up here?
Oh, no, I just love the wire hand sculptures and how it kind of raises it up multiple levels. I thought that was a really smart addition by one of our motion designers.
Very cool. Yeah, some floating sculptures here. Yeah, I've noticed that in some of these rooms, just having little pieces of art, just to give something else interesting to look at. And you know the
Hopefully something in the vein of what we're talking about in the room. Right.
yeah. So like, how many total? Do you know like how many total polygons or how big this space is, or how do you measure that?
Yeah, actually, if you click, I didn't disable it. If you click the frame, oh, you're on an index, aren't you?
Well, I'm on Firefox, and so I didn't see the normal stuff. But yeah, maybe you could just tell me.
Gotcha. Well, I'm not totally sure what it came out. It's bigger than Hubs advises polygon wise. I think we're well over like 100,000 triangles, and I think their espoused limit is 50K. What we found was that that's more of like a download limitation. It just results in a longer load time rather than you know crashing or something. So
Right.
we found that was a worthy trade-off to have like the more complex geometry and the more intricately designed spaces. Although I will say we have some farther optimization to do because this has worked only intermittently on iPhone so far.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say in the mobile devices, I still have to try it out on the Quest. On the
Mm-hmm.
Index on the PC, it was able to handle it fine. So
Mm-hmm.
now we're in a space that kind of feels like a diner. It's got like these different places, and so and there's a little jukebox that's playing some music. But so
Mm-hmm.
what is this theme of this room?
This is the food and drink room. So yeah, it's a lot of people trying to find the theme. The room is diner themed for kind of nostalgic reasons, I think, because a lot of these food posters do touch on like the nostalgia of a home cooked meal or something you make yourself and that sustains you. So I think that is kind of what we're going for here. And of course, we got some Little Richard over on the jukebox tribute.
Nice. Yeah, maybe we could walk through. Yeah, as I was walking through, then there's kind of like this little space as you get close enough, then you start to hear the music play, and then as you walk away. So I thought that was a nice little touch, you know, to be able to have little audio regions where as you're walking
Right.
around, you're able to kind of, you know, have different stuff. And there's again in this space, there's like these little flying airplanes that are flying around, as well as like a mailbox, little sculpture here in the middle. So what's the theme of this room?
Okay, so this I believe is reaching out. Let's move away from the music, maybe. um, this room is reaching out. I think as everybody's been so confined in their homes, we find ourselves, looking for old acquaintances or sending messages to people who we normally may not think of in our day to day life. So I think all the posters in this room kind of center around that.
I see. Yeah, I like the piece of art here in the middle. And as I want to sort of go up into this ramp here because this is the place where I saw a sneak preview, but it's kind of nice
Mm,
to. I really like having spaces where you're able to look down on the rest of the space. So as you get to the top of this big long ramp here, you're able to be in the room where you start off and where you spawn in, and you can kind of look down and just
right.
you know see as people are entering in. But you do have some posters up here. So what's the theme of this room here?
Oh shoot, what is it? Let's check. And I think
Oh,
my
it's
colleague Ethan has joined us,
music
so he might
inspired.
have his way up again.
Yes.
Hey, Kempa, this
Hello.
is Ethan Michalicek,
Hey, Ethan.
one of my teammates, and yeah, one of the main architects of this space, technically as well as creatively.
Very cool. Yeah, very impressive job. I really enjoy the diversity of different spaces, and yeah, it's as I was telling James, it's one of the more intriguing and diverse big spaces I've seen in hubs so far. So great job.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is the music inspired. So just a handful of posters up here as you get in here. So what was the music inspiration?
Um,
It, it's just something people always reach for in tough times. I think is how I know I'm a musician personally, so that's one of the things that like affects me most is when I hear a song that I used to love and maybe it is framed totally differently now. So I think there's just this massive emotional pull that music has on people, and some of these posters were a reflection of that.
Very
yeah, I
cool.
know Tyson with this one. He actually used an already existing album artwork and modified it um, to fit the theme. This was Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division as the original album.
Oh, right.
That's right.
And what is you said there was 150 submissions. Do you know how many posters ended up in the final museum?
There are all 154 submissions are in
Oh,
here.
okay. So you took all. Okay, that's good. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if there were any curation because I. So okay, cool. So it's 150. Yeah, just and it's all one one GLB file and one texture to be able to do everything, right?
Well, not one texture, but definitely one GLB file. I think a total there is probably around 55 different textures used in this whole space. Don't tell anyone over at Hubs that we use that many, um, but yeah.
And he was saying maybe don't move around so much for the
Okay,
recording quality. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're speaking and you're just stand still, it just helps.
gotcha. Here, I'll move right here so I'm not in James' way.
Cool. And maybe we can sort of finish out walking through here the last couple of rooms. So yeah, maybe you guys could lead the way, and then I'll talk behind you.
Great.
Nice little video here of all the folks, and you have a nice little promo video as well in the middle with the kind of the geodesic dome type of space that has like a little promo video that is being projected in a spherical way. That's kind of a nice touch. And you know, when I walk into this room, just really noticing kind of like the different lighting vibe in here, a lot more darker. Looks like there's a lot of medical workers. So what's the theme of this room? Looks like it's heroes of health.
Exactly. This is the heroes room, and it's a little more solemn and a little more contemplative, and be focusing, yeah, really on like the healthcare workers and the first responders, and really anybody that's had to be out there on the front lines while we're kind of as creatives, honestly, comfortably in our homes for the most part. And not to say the industry hasn't suffered, but that's the case for us. So yeah, this room is just an acknowledgement of all the hard work and the true bravery that's going on outside of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like how the colors from room to room, you're able to really create this contrast of, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
space that we just came from is really wide open, lots of light. It's kind of like very bright and white. And then you go into this room and it's very dark. And so, yeah, that I think that's part of what makes this space so interesting to me is just to see that building and releasing of tensions and contrast, and you know, in this space having that darkness because it is, you know, they're on the front lines dealing with the death and seeing the death, and so yeah, just it gives a very specific mood when I enter into this space here.
For sure, for sure. And Ethan handled the lighting throughout the whole place, so he could probably speak to some of those decisions.
Yeah. So I think it was Andy. Was it Andy who designed this room?
I believe so.
Yeah. So this one, I think when he designed it, I'm pretty sure he had in mind like a more traditional art museum sort of feeling, which is why actually we included a marble statue there, and we changed out the frames in this room only. Um, and yeah, it was interesting doing the lighting from room to room because obviously, if you've ever baked lighting for anything, you'll know that it attempts to recreate reality. And so we have to think about, how do you experience a space in real life? But then you also have to work within the confines of a digital virtual space as well. So it's an interesting blend between the two.
Nice. Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next areas. But yeah, I'd say for me I was telling James earlier, the lighting from room to room is the thing that I think makes it so distinct, because a lot of the different spaces that I've seen in hubs haven't had this level of baked lighting, and so you tend to get a little bit more generic or just flat. But you know, for me personally, I'd like to see a little bit more like sunlight, or you know, kind of like, because I like the lighting on the walls, but just to see if there's other ways to kind of bring in that kind of natural glow. But and I, you know, just this week there was the whole Unreal Engine 5 release that said that it was going to have like global illumination that'd be dynamic, so you won't have to like bake lighting anymore.
Sure, sure.
I'm waiting for the day for that to be coming to open source technologies like Mozilla Hubs, but to be able to
Yeah.
have that level of high geometry as well as global illumination and the reflections, but just different ways to give natural sunlight. If there's one thing that I'd want to see more of in this space, it'd be a little bit more like natural sunlight and shadows in that way. Um, and yeah, just to give a little bit more of that feeling of that, callbacks to that level of immersion. But what I can say is that having that level of lighting that they have done with the bake lighting does give that extra level of realism that goes beyond the other spaces that I've seen so far. So I think it's definitely a
Thank
step
you.
forward.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. And again, like that pipeline to do that kind of light baking, texture baking is no joke. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy to do in a way that's optimized for the web. So again, again, I have to tip my cap to Ethan here because he's innovating on that side for us. It's amazing.
So do you do the lighting in Blender, or where do you use other tools to be able to do the lighting?
Yeah, so the lighting in this, I have my own personal desktop machine, and I did it all in Blender, but James actually was able to figure out how to get an AWS instance running that has Blender on it. And that instance of Blender, we were actually able to use up to 8 NVIDIA GPUs on one instance of Blender. So I would send the file up to that instance, and then I would run the baking process on there, so it would go much faster.
Oh wow! So you're really like how so how fast would it be on your computer, and then how fast would it take if you were to upload it? Then
So, so we determined that one of the GPUs was slightly faster than the GPU I have in my own personal computer. So I have a 2080, and the instance GPUs were NVIDIA V100s. And so essentially, it's effectively 8 times faster, plus a little, than
okay.
my own personal computer.
And so how long would it take to say bake one of these rooms?
It depends on the room, actually. For this room that we're standing in right now, for example, it also depends on the sample count. But if I were to bake it at, I think most of the time I was baking at around 2048 samples. And I think for this room, I could rebake it probably in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay, and that's if you were uploading it online.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would take a bit longer on my computer.
Now, another thing that I've noticed from just working with Blender and Hubs is how is your what do you do for the workflow to be able to look at it and to render it and then to see it in VR? For the Hubs, I would have to like repost it. I know that if you have a wired VR headset, there potentially could be ways to be able to look at it models directly, but how are you actually like what was your workflow to be able to actually do these previews and iterate
Yeah.
between making a change and be able to actually see it in VR?
We went through a bunch of different design ideas or concepts and started with some asset store stuff, didn't like any of that ultimately, and really went into just really almost totally custom like room geometry. There's a few assets per room that we sourced, but still we were basically able to pretty quickly upload like untextured lightweight versions of the space to Hubs and get an idea of what the space felt like with that flat shading. um, and we had our whole creative team walk through the space together, just like we normally would have met in a Google Hangouts or a Zoom or something, but we met in a Mozilla Hubs and we walked through the space we were designing together. And it looked a little chromier back then, but I think everybody was able to envision the possibilities. And yeah, I couldn't be happier with how it turned out personally. It's um, one of the most meaningful projects I've ever contributed to.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
really quite timely as well. I mean, just as we're all in quarantine lockdown, so just to see the diversity of different art that is coming in and the different themes, it's really cool to, like I said, the as I walked through, it was a little difficult. I didn't see the signs until I went all the way through,
Mhm.
and then I see the signs now. But yeah, but what is this room that we're in now? What's the theme?
This is the typography room. Sorry, I'll stay there. This is the typography room. A lot of the posters were just kind of slogans or idioms that could kind of be succinctly plastered in a beautiful font and a beautiful layout. And so we kind of grouped all those together.
Nice. Maybe we could walk to the final, back to the beginning here as we walk back and just maybe kind of wrap up. But yeah, there's a big diversity of different styles. It does. I mean, what's great is that you've started. Oops, hold on. Let me get away from this this audio that's playing here.
The player is right over in that wall. So if we get away from that wall.
Creating something meaningful even while we're apart. I think that's a good thing to end on as I'm looking here. But yeah, so I love the fact that you're able to collaborate with all these different graphic designers. Maybe you could just talk a bit about, like, how did you recruit all these people? How did you get the word out to have people submit to this project?
Sure. Well, Paradowski's been around for almost 40 years. So we have, and St. Louis isn't such a huge town that we don't all know each other, right? So I think just spreading the word through our local networks and professional networks and I think what we found is a lot of people felt the exact same way that we did, that they needed to use their creative impulses to respond to this crisis in some way. And this was an outlet for that. I know it was for all the poster designers, and I can say for myself and Ethan and our whole team, 100%. That's what it was. So it's been amazing to have it to focus on and to kind of pour myself into. I think the whole team feels that way. So.
Nice. And Ethan, maybe because you came in the middle, I usually have people introduce themselves, and I didn't in the moment, but maybe you could just like introduce yourself and what you do there at Paradowski.
Yeah, so I'm also a part of James' team, and I guess my title is technically immersive technology engineer. And basically, just day to day, we're doing honestly a wide variety of work, anything from AR to VR to native applications to stuff that's on the web. But all of it has one thing in common, and that's that it's just immersive or interactive in some way. I don't think that there's been actually a single project that I've worked on since I came to Paradowski that has not been an interactive project in some way. But the amount of variety that I've gotten to experience while I've been here is astounding.
Yeah, well, this is a great, in terms of the using Mozilla Hubs and be able to really explore, really pushing the edge for what's possible. And so I'm really excited that this is happening, and hope lots of people get to check it out. How long is this space going to be open? Do you have a runtime, or like what's the plan there for this gallery opening?
Yeah, indefinitely right now. So we're cutting off poster sales soon. You can buy all this work on apartposters.com. But we are cutting off sales in the next week in order to send everything to print at once and kind of maximize cost efficiency in that way, so we can donate as much as possible to the WHO. So that's the other component of all this is the benefit side of the e-commerce site. So that's still all available for right now. So that'll be for the next week, but the space should be open indefinitely. I think we'll plan a closing show at some point as well, kind of a big farewell before we send off.
So if people want to buy a poster, they should do it within the next week or so, just to get their order in, right?
That's right. I think we're cutting it off. I can get you a final date on that. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think just looking at the virtual market, the VCAT number 4, and VR chat, and you're walking around these different immersive worlds and buying virtual goods. But in some ways, this is like, it's for charity, but it's also like this spatial e-commerce for people to be able to get some art for their home that reflects this time, but also for it to go to a good cause. So really cool that this is all came together.
I'm hoping that more and more museums around the world start to see the possibilities of just easily accessible web-based 3D galleries like this, and the many different platforms you can use to access it just makes it so user-friendly, especially now that public spaces are questionably available in the future. Who knows how things will play out at this point. So, yeah, it's a trend I hope continues to grow. I've seen a little bit of it, but I think one of the things we're trying to do here is open people's eyes to the possibilities of this tech. That's a major goal of our team and our whole company. So, yeah.
Great. Well, one last final question I'd like to ask a lot of the people I interview is, what do you each think the ultimate potential of immersive technologies and immersive art might be, and what it might be able to enable?
That's funny. Ken, I've listened to your podcast a ton, and even knowing that question always comes up, I didn't think about it until you said that, and now I'm like, oh shit. So, the ultimate potential of immersive technology it's pretty hard to define because it's going to be what we make of it, I think, and you can make tools for good and evil. The power of spatially aware computers is going to open up unimaginable use cases in applications across a wide range of devices. And I don't think society is quite reckoning with what that's going to bring about yet. And I don't think anybody really totally knows what's going to happen. But as computers start to have more and more of a complete semantic understanding of their surroundings, as well as a geometrical understanding of their surroundings, I personally think that's where I'm a bit speaking out of my depth here, but it seems like an array of a lot of different kinds of sensors in the physical world is the type of system that needs to underlie some type of generalized AI. So I see it as a little bit of a field that way. But again, that's long-term speculation. I think in the next 10 years, the thing is, can we how far can we move the ball forward? Um, and that's why I'm so excited to work in this field and to be working on cutting edge projects like that. So.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, honestly, I feel like people tend to see, VR, AR, just immersive tech in general, and think of it as oftentimes just like a novelty or something that will wear off, as like a fad. But so many times that this kind of stuff comes up, you'll see it end up down the road. The same tech gets used in something that then becomes a part of our everyday lives. So I feel like, things like AR, VR are going to subtly insert themselves just kind of into our day-to-day lives without us really realizing it until it's already happened. Um, and then at one point, 10 years down the road, we're gonna look back and say, oh yeah, remember when, VR was new and you could get a headset, and people maybe they laughed at you for getting into a headset or playing games online, but now they're using spatial computing every day. So yeah, I just think that that's just kind of how technology tends to propagate forward.
For sure. I grew up in the early 90s, and this was before the current dominance of the computing industry. And it was not like a popular, cool thing to be into computers at that time. And I feel like that the whole culture is like swept the other way. And now it's in a weird place where like tech is this semi-dominant force in society, and that's still very weird to me. And I'm obviously this is not a totally original thought, but yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see people change from AR, VR, XR. It's cool, but what can it do to 5, 10 years down the line when it's seeped its way into everybody's daily life without us even quite realizing. So.
Very cool. Is there anything else that's left unsaid that you'd like to say to the broader immersive community?
No, I'll say to you, Kent, thanks so much for sharing the site out and for taking the time to talk to us and for your kind words. Like, actually, I see him floating around here. Andy Wise, the main creative force behind and design force behind this whole space.
Very cool.
Flagged him from his room moderation duties to
Cool. Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this recording here. Thanks again for showing me around, taking me on a little tour. And, I'll be posting this video up on YouTube and possibly releasing it as a podcast. But yeah, great job. Really impressive. And it's like the beginning of something whole new. It's like the early days of the metaverse. So I'm just really excited to see where it all goes. So thank you all for creating it and for joining me and taking me on this little tour. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.